Hey Deckers, Baldur's Gate 3 release is almost upon us, but with it working on Steam Deck, how has it been through early access? Well, we're here to tell you what to look out for, and hopefully some of this stuff is being fixed on release day. So, graphics wise, inside it definitely looks like it's going to be more than capable. Low FSR does not look particularly great, but it does make it playable. Medium settings inside looks absolutely fantastic, and looks like it holds over 60 frames per second. And even with ultra settings, which for some reason it defaults to on the Steam Deck at the moment, it looks absolutely incredible and pushes around 40 to 50 frames per second. However, as soon as we go outside, this becomes a huge problem. As you can see here, it looks very different on each of the settings. Our recommended settings will get you a good mix in between here, and you'll notice that this becomes a massive problem on the frames per second when we start moving around. And the quality of the models really makes a huge difference here. As you can see, with our recommended settings, you're only going to be pushing around 30 frames per second. Even with everything zoomed in and looking great on the model detail, that's going to be around the 30 mark is where we're going to be aiming for this in total. With the medium settings, we're pushing around the 30 frames per second mark again, but this really dips down a little bit later, although it does look quite incredible. With high or ultra settings, we're down into the 20 frames per second mark. It's really difficult, and we get some weird motion blur on top of this as well. I think it just really pushes it a bit too far. So our recommended settings, which we'll dive into in full in just a second, we'll show you scrolling around here and a bit of battle as well. But we do still get some big dips under the 30 frames per second mark, even if we cap this on the Steam Deck and also in-game at 30 as well. This is really apparent through some of the cutscenes, especially hair-heavy versions. You'll see that it will dip under that 30 mark quite often, but it is still playable. The graphics and the cutscenes are quite incredible in this game, so it really is a shame to see it stutter here and there, and hopefully they'll iron this out in the full version. Now, our best settings for this one are to come in and set the low quality preset, and then change the model quality to medium, then scroll down, which is easier said than done at the moment, to texture quality, and also set that to medium. Then change the anti-aliasing up to TAA and hit apply. You then also want to set the Steam Deck frame rate cap at 30 frames per second, as well as the frame rate cap in game to 30 as well, which again is easier said than done with the current controllers. So hopefully with the controller layout, it will be a lot simpler. But this is our best settings for now, and we will revisit this at launch. Now, we have seen in a new news update that they are going to be implementing FSR 2, however it's not going to be there at launch, which is a little bit disappointing, but we'll certainly see if they've made any more improvements between their patch 9 in the early access and the release version once it drops. One thing that the early access does not have, which is supposed to be there day one for release, is controller support. So we'll go through which of the community mappings that we have got here, as we've been using this absolutely incredible community layout throughout our testing, which has been working an absolute treat, making it more than playable on the deck. Community mappings really are a saviour for a lot of the games without native controller support, so hats off to those that made them for Baldur's Gate 3. There's a few things that you need to look out for. Although it was already marked as Steam Deck compatible, some of the in-game text is definitely hard to read. There was no full controller configuration at the time of this video, but as we said, we have been told it will be there day one. I was also running this under Proton Experimental to make sure that we had all the latest fixes available for this, so if you are not seeing quite the same as us, then we are running the experimental Proton, and we are also currently running under the Steam OS 3.5 beta, which is why you see some slightly different overlay up at the top. Every time we've run this, we did have to recompile the Vulkan shaders, but it only took around a minute. It's also worth noting that you have to run this under the DirectX 11 version right now. If you try to run it under Vulkan, it will just crash every single time. So make sure that's the case. And if you do create a Larian Studios account, you will have full cross-save, so definitely worth looking into. Once you've run this at least once via the DirectX 11, you can come into the properties under General and Launch options and enter --skip -launcher, and that will bypass the launcher from then on. If you do keep the launcher, make sure that you close it during the game, as it does cause a few hiccups here and there. As we said, we were using a community controller layout, Under the controller settings, we were using the Sound of Silence Easy Play for Baldur's Gate 3 by Living Vertai. Thank you very much for this, you've done absolutely amazing. Obviously the official layout should work on day one, but if not, this is a fantastic layout anyway. But for some reason it was quite far down in the community layout. So if you go to the community layouts, make sure you scroll all the way through and find the Sound of Silence version. I haven't tried a few of the others, but I did get on with this really well. And you can see by the amount of hours played that a lot of people have been using this as well. So be sure to upvote it if you do use it. We'll be taking a look at Baldur's Gate 3 once it launches officially to see if they have fixed some of these issues and whether performance has improved. And of course, as soon as they add FSR 2, we'll also take a look at that as well. Let us know in the comments below if you're going to be diving in or are you going to wait for some performance updates from the release version. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.
There's too much at stake.
Worried about your precious hides, the both of you.
Enough! Squabbling is pointless.